The story this time around is definitely a lot more cohesive and decently thought out. This season's story loosely follows the story of the fall of Reach, Halo Reach, First Strike, The Flood, Ghost of Onyx, Combat Evolved, Hunt the Truth. It takes a lot of aspects from different Halo media and combines it into one singular story. The first half of the season does focus on the fall of Reach, with the Master Chief trying to warn everyone of the coming invasion, but nobody listens to him. Oni end up leaving Reach to fall, and Chief and most of Silver Team to die without their armor. This half of the season ends with an episode filled with action and showcasing some of the fall of Reach. The second half of the season focuses on the Chief trying to find where the people who left him to die on Reach are, and him trying to enact his revenge on those that caused the deaths on Reach. It also focuses on Kai training the Spartan 3s for a battle with the Covenant fleet. Now, this half of the season was a little shit. Apart from a few good scenes like the Spartan 3 training sessions, or Chief and Cortana discovering the artifact, or just any scene with Akasin in it, episode 5 and 6 in particular were a little lackluster, and I feel like a lot of those issues come from Soren and the woman's storyline, particularly in episode 5 where they find their son, but it's the wrong kid, so they have to leave, making the episode kind of pointless. Episode 7 focused more on finding the Halo and the Covenant's imminent invasion, as well as setting up the stakes for the future episodes like The Flood or Akasin finding out what the Spike truly does, which I thought was a great scene, by the way. And episode 8 was just the best episode of the show. Like, I don't even need to review that. We all know that it's the best part.
John, you've gone and saved them.
You have no idea what I can do.
I feel like a lot of the emotional beats didn't hit as well as they could have. I feel like this is because of a lack of exploration in certain areas. I don't think Vanek as a character is particularly well explored enough to make us care about him in the way that the show wants us to. All we knew about the guy was that he liked animals, especially birds. Maybe if the season spent a little extra time early on establishing Vanek as a character in the way that the rest of Silver Team were, the emotional impact of his death would have been a lot larger, and episode 5 might have been received a bit better. Episode 5 focused on the impact of Vanek's death on John and Riz in particular, and Vanek's funeral was a great scene. I think the send him to the skyline from John would have been amazing if only we knew Vanek a bit better. On the other hand, Riz's departure from the rest of the season was handled amazingly, and I think her retirement was well earned. This season spent a lot of the first episodes focusing on Riz and her issues, which made the payoff of her figuring out what it means to live without being a soldier all the more impactful and good. I also feel like Oni faking Chief's death was a great concept, however it fell a little bit flat in execution. I really think that one scene could have changed the impact of this storyline for the better. Maybe a scene of the public mourning the Chief would have been a great indicator that they thought he was dead, because a lot of people didn't understand that Oni had faked his death until the very end, when Chief revealed that he wasn't dead. The show talks at great length as to how important Chief's image is to the war effort and the morale of the troops and the public, but they never really show it until the end of episode 7. Although I think the way that Keyes inspired the Marines in episode 4 with the Chief was actually quite good. Another thing I'd like to mention was the fight between Kai and the Chief during episode 6. You can tell that it's supposed to be an emotional moment, and the show makes you believe that it is. However, after the scene is over, you don't really feel the impact the show wants you to feel. It's the final remaining members of Silver Team who grew up together and have been the only family they've ever known, and they're fighting due to the lies of Oni. But it doesn't feel like that. The scene itself is really well done, and the way Chief talks to Kai is a great emotional factor, but we've never seen any of what he talks about. The Halo show did kind of shoot itself in the foot by beginning during the Covenant War. I really feel like the show should have begun with more emphasis on how the Spartans were made and how they grew up together, but instead they made the entirety of Season 1 a mystery as to how the Spartans were made, and nobody liked that. This meant we never got to see them grow up. The show begins and Silver Team has already been established and they're already working well. And the show doesn't really help to add anything to the friendship of Kai and John, as throughout the entirety of Season 1 and the first half of Season 2, John is just really rude to Kai for no reason. So we never really see John and Kai's friendship, and John talking about it just doesn't hit the same as it would have as if we had seen it instead. In the end, it makes their bittersweet goodbye in episode 7 and Kai's sacrifice in episode 8 not hit as hard as it could have, because all we have ever seen them do is fight and argue. James Ackerson, played by Joseph Morgan, was a new character introduced this season, and when he was first revealed in that one Halo Waypoint article, I did not care. Until I did. The moment he appeared in a show, he instantly stole the show for me, and commandeered my entire attention in any scene he was in. He quickly became my favourite character, and I would rejoice in any scene he was in. He was easily a highlight of the season that I genuinely have no problems with. The scenes with him and the Chief at the beginning of the season were gripping, and it was entertaining to watch the power struggle between the two. And when you rewatch them after you finish the season, you see things from a different light, knowing that Ackerson knew everything John was telling him was true, but his orders from Parangoski made it so that he had to gaslight John and everyone around him into believing he was lying. The mini-story with Ackerson's father and his dead sister was one of the best parts of season 2 as well. Just the way that the season slowly reveals that the clone that keeps coming to keep Cozy company is Ackerson's sister, and the way that the clone is then used to give his dad a few moments of peace before his death is also very gripping and emotional. In the second half of the season, we can clearly see Ackerson question his morals, and you can see the guilt start to flood in. While I did enjoy him as the villain for the majority of season 2, it was also interesting to see him feel doubt and eventually switch sides to help the Master Chief and reveal what the Spike really does. I'm interested to see where his character goes from here, perhaps a Captain Keyes type, or maybe a man on the run from the UNSC and Oni. Who knows? Ackerson is easily one of the best parts of the season and quickly became my favourite character bar the Chief. He's well acted, well written, and I can't wait to see what happens with him and his character moving forward into the potential season 3. Kwan Ha in season 1 was unbearable outside of the first episode, and seeing her at the beginning of season 2 made me want to die. However, as the season progressed, her story got more and more interesting. Nobody really knew where Kwan's story was going until episode 7, where people slowly clocked exactly what was happening and how the show was building up to it. The way the Flood was revealed in the show was cool, okay? I enjoyed the Onyx outbreak and I thought it was really cool. The introduction of the Flood in the show is really done well, and it's done from the perspective of an infected person, which we've never seen in any visual medium before, which is really cool to see. I also really like that if you pay close attention, you can see that the guard that's guarding Ackerson and woman has a scratch on him, which shows us that he was helping contain the infected woman, which makes it so much more obvious that he's infected too. In the command room too, you can see some people in the background stand completely still, and you can even see some twitching. This is really cool storytelling and makes the viewer anticipate when the infected will activate and start infecting the others. I'm not too sure where the Halsey infection storyline is going to go. I'm a little nervous that Miranda could find a cure, but then again, the fact that there is no other cure than the Halo rings is such an important part of the lore that I don't think they'll go there. I do feel like they might try and clone her though. When it's revealed that the Flood is the monster that Kwan has been talking about throughout the entirety of the season, a lot of things quickly fall into place. However, even after the season ends, there are a lot of unanswered questions like, who's this lady? Why did the Flood stop? How did the Flood stop? Why has Kwan got plot armor? Why was the shaman woman on Sanctuary and then was a ghost for the rest of the season? And why did the shaman lady say that Master Chief death is soon? He's not dead, he's right there. While interesting, these plot lines are never answered properly and are instead given to us in vague riddles. I just hope that the writers give us an explanation as to what the hell is going on with Kwan next season, because so far it's getting a little bit annoying now. This season we get to see an Arbiter, Va Gatanai, who is an original character that I really like. I feel like everyone really likes him though. Does it surprise you? We also get McKee back again, who was killed last season, but she's back, I guess. Somehow McKee returned? Yes? No? I don't know. Either way, McKee's a lot more bearable this season, despite the Blessed One stuff. She's bearable this season. Her relationship with Vargat and I is explored upon quite heavily this season, with them starting off despising each other, and then over the course of the season they become allies, and then they go off on their own to find the Halo after bonding to each other. Not in a weird way, that she gives herself the mark of shame. They don't bang. Although, just like many other aspects of this season, the Arbiter himself wasn't explored nearly as much for us to care about for his death. The only reason that most of us care about the Arbiter to begin with was because the Halo nerds inside of us know the pain of being an Arbiter and the story that comes with it, and most of us just fill the gaps. The show does not show him becoming an Arbiter. They do not explain why he is an Arbiter, which I think is important considering all anyone does is talk about his shame. What did he do? Why is he an Arbiter? What did he do that brought such great shame to his name, and why should we care about him? I think the Arbiter could have been a much more compelling villain if we could have seen him fail at a task he was given and the tragedy of his whole life falling down around him, only for him to be given the opportunity for redemption for killing the demon, the Master Chief. But since that is taken away from him, he knows he must find the Sacred Ring in order to remove his shame, only for that to be taken away from him too when he was beaten and killed by, you guessed it, the Master Chief. I think this season should have shown us why Vargatanai is shamed by the prophets and how much he wants to redeem himself, but in the end he can't, and his shame is removed in death. If they had done this, I feel like the Arbiter could have been a much more tragic fan favourite character, and with a bit more depth, his death could have been a great impact that the show clearly wants you to feel, but since we know nothing about the guy, we don't feel much for him. And that's coming from someone who knows how Arbiters work. Imagine how the general audience feels about his death. In Season 1, the Master Chief was heavily mischaracterized from the way he is in the mainline lore. Season 2 had the opportunity to fix this, and I believe they have in a way. At certain points this season, you can see Chief developing, you can see him changing. The events in the show are clearly having an effect on him, and by the end of Season 2, he feels a lot more like Chief than he did at the beginning of the season. I know this is a far younger Chief, and a Chief that has had different experiences to mainline Chief, but I feel like him getting angry at Kai for making a mistake in Episode 7 was not in character at all. I feel like Chief has developed faith in himself throughout Season 2, as well as understanding how he fits into the universe and what he's supposed to do. He's clearly shown he's not a machine, and his loyalties lie with himself and humanity, not with UNSC and not with Oni. Chief also went down this path in the mainline lore, however it took a lot longer for that to happen. It took until Halo 4 for Chief to disregard orders, but in the Silver Timeline, Chief does it in the first episode. This leaves the writers of Season 2 with a Chief who has been both developed too far into the future, but was also not developed enough to where he is the Master Chief from, let's say, Combat Evolved. But I think the writers of Season 2 have managed to get the Silver Timeline Chief into a nice Goldilocks zone by the end of Season 2, where he both acts like 343 Chief, but also acts like Bungie Chief in a way. I mean, you can tell very early on in this season that the writers wanted to focus on the human that is John, and less on the title that is Master Chief. They wanted to explore this new version of Chief that Season 2 was trying to create after Season 1, and the best way to do that is to take away his armor and leave him vulnerable. Vulnerable to loss. Vulnerable to not being able to do everything he is meant to do. And this helps build Chief up to resemble something more to what mainline lore Chief is than how he was in Season 1. While I don't think that taking the armor away for as long as they did was a great idea, I feel like as though the armor needed to be off for the fall of Reach for things to happen, such as Vanek's death, and trigger the development that the Chief needed to happen. It feels like the Chief has to work to earn his armor this season, and his speech at the end of the season really shows that he has earned it. It belongs to him, and it belongs to all those who have fought and will die for humanity. He is a symbol of hope. Hopefully, we can see more armor next season. This season ends on a cliffhanger, clearly teasing a Season 3. It's not been confirmed whether a Season 3 will actually happen, however it does seem likely. So I thought I'd give my predictions on next season from where we left off. Season 3 will start with the Master Chief entering the library on the Halo Ring and coming across either a flood outbreak or a grave mine. I believe this is the case due to the state of his armor and the helmet at the end of the season, as well as the line, "What is that thing?" I think that Thel Vadam will become an Arbiter next season to replace the old one. Perhaps he becomes an Arbiter after the UNSC fleet destroyed their massive glassing ship thingy. I don't know the name. As mentioned previously, Ackerson will either become an enemy of the UNSC or he will rejoin with the UNSC and become sort of a Captain Keyes type figure now that there isn't really anyone else besides Lord Hood who was not in season 2. Is he even alive anymore? I also think that we have not seen the end of the Onyx outbreak. Miranda and Halsey are still in there, and the Flood hive mind has a lot of information thanks to the fact that they now have Parangosky and several other Oni personnel on their side. I think that the shaman lady that Quan keeps talking to might either be the librarian or maybe some kind of weird grave mind that used Quan to set the Flood free. I don't know, man. I'm not too sure about that one. Soren and Kessler's story clearly isn't over. There's more to be done here. I'm just not sure where it can go. I also think that they'll merge Halo Combat Evolved and Halo 2 together to create one story on one Halo ring instead of a whole season focused just on Combat Evolved. Overall, I think Halo Season 2 is a drastic improvement over the first that draws from the source material where necessary and diverts from it in interesting ways. All performances from the cast were great, with Ackerson, Master Chief and Soren being standouts for me. For the most part, the CGI was amazing and the fight scenes were well choreographed and had a unique sense of style when compared with the fight scenes of Season 1. However, this season has had so many different plot threads that it struggled to fully flesh out most aspects of the story, such as Silver Team's relationship with one another. With a strong first half, this season sets great expectations for the rest of the season. However, the flame slowly starts to dwindle in episodes 5 and 6, although episodes 7 and 8 manage to keep the second half of the season in check. If the show does get greenlit for a third season, I'm optimistic that it can take what it has learned from the previous 2 seasons and deliver a season that reaches even higher highs than season 2.